that will be made and policies that will be crafted from this meeting and the conversation today, Lord, will go a long way in changing the lives of our people for better. We pray this, believing in Jesus Christ, our Lord. You may take your seats, ladies and gentlemen. PSST, I had that and I will consider it. The Honorable Minister of State for General Duties in the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, the Honorable Henry Musasizi, of course, Dr. Richard Newfarmer from the IGC, our Permanent Secretary and Secretary to the Treasury, Ramadan Gobi, the senior government officials here representing the ministries, departments, and agencies, our partners, the development partners represented here, our members of the private sector that are representing the different stakeholders in the private sector, the members of the Fourth Estate, the media that is represented here. I want, on behalf of the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, and on behalf of the IGC, to welcome you for this 8th High-Level Economic Growth Forum. Our theme, Seizing Opportunities for Structural Transformation to Increase Productivity and Resilience. So our very first order of business today, ladies and gentlemen, is first of all to appreciate the IGC and the ministry for hosting us for another growth forum. Can we warmly appreciate the IGC and the ministry who have been very consistent in hosting this economic growth forum that goes a long way in informing some of the key decisions we make as a country and the ministry does undertake in the budget framework, the process that technically is starting in the next few weeks. We will have several conversations this morning that include panel discussions. Our very first panel discussion, of course, looking at the growth strategy for structural transformation. We'll immediately dive into another session looking at industrial policy, promoting agro-industry, manufacturing, mining, and exports. And we'll, in the afternoon, quickly look at overcoming financing constraints, public and private savings, and conclude our day one with that conversation, and then dive into the conversations for day two. It will be quite interactive. We are going to request that you join us in participating. We will make it a bit more interesting using your smartphone gadgets. We will be asking some questions and hoping to get quite a bit of feedback. Our panel sessions that will be chaired by the various heads of our agencies will of course include a Q&A session and plenary sessions where we expect that you will participate in sharing with us your insights on these different conversations. So to kickstart this conversation this morning, I want to invite the Permanent Secretary and Secretary to the Treasury to come and make welcome remarks and also set the stage for what this forum is really about. Can we appreciate our PSST, ladies and gentlemen?
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Maurice. Honorable Minister of State for General Duties, and also representing the Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, Honorable Musasizi, our good friend, Dr. Richard Newfarmer, the IGC Country Director for Uganda and Rwanda, and our long-standing old friend and partner, the Auditor General of the Republic of Uganda. You are most welcome with your team. All government officials, I can see so many of them in your different capacities. All of the participants who are going to present papers, the different professors whom we invited here, all of the staff of IGC, our partners from different fora, the private sector, the civil society, academia, the media, and all of you, the people of Uganda, who are in the room and those who are on television and those who are streaming live on different platforms. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. And it is a great pleasure that I welcome you to this year's high-level forum. As you know, this forum is an annual event which we've held for 8 years now, and it is a vital platform for us to discuss on how to accelerate Uganda's economic growth. It's called the Growth Forum. We would want to grow this economy much faster and sustainably. And we want to do it using evidence-based strategies, interventions. So this forum is a very critical platform. Aligned to this year's theme, which already the MC has indicated, we want to concentrate this year on how to seize opportunities. I know we have so many problems we discuss. This year it's about how do we take advantage of the environment and seize opportunities to promote structural transformation, to see that we grow, but at the same time we change the structure of the economy, the sectoral composition, the employment, and so on and so forth. I am confident that this forum is going to be able to contribute viable insights to support our goal of growing the economy tenfold in the next 15 years. I see here a number of people from my ministry who are working tirelessly to ensure that this task is achieved. We want to grow the economy, dear Ugandans, tenfold in the next 15 years. And we hope you can guide us in this forum. Now, despite facing a number of global challenges, particularly the tighter financial conditions, the supply chain disruptions we've seen, we have seen a number of shocks also here, drought, Ebola, some floods, so on and so forth, a number of them. But also we have also had false alarms, a number of them. Despite all of that, Uganda's economy has demonstrated very impressive resilience by achieving a growth rate of 6% last financial year. And this performance significantly surpasses the sub-Saharan African average of 3.8% last year and a global average of 3.2%. Uganda's strong economic growth has been driven not by good prayers only, but by good economic management, by investment in infrastructure development, by investment in human capital development, by deliberate government programs for agriculture, for agro-industry, for oil and gas, for parish development model, for also providing a conducive and stable macroeconomic environment. So it is growth which has come from hard work. And I would want to encourage everybody to keep on track to ensure that we can sustain what we have achieved, but propel now the economy to a higher level of growth. We have also seen government proactively supporting businesses to recover from the shocks, including COVID-19, in different areas. We know them. And we are continuing with this industrial policy. It's a deliberate government policy of supporting strategic businesses so that they can support the growth of the overall economy. On the external front, the country has also continued to attract more foreign direct investment, as well as getting back remittances from Ugandans living and working abroad. The total foreign direct investments have increased now to $3.01 billion as at the end of April 2024. In particular, increased FDI was observed in oil and gas sector, and this has spurred economic activity, especially in infrastructure and services. Similarly, remittances have risen to $1.43 billion in 2023 from $1.25 billion the previous year. Exports have also increased quite significantly. Coffee, for example, where government has been deliberate in investing over time, has seen the earnings rise from $845 million in 2022-23 now to $1.143 billion in 2023-24. We are now having a $1 billion coffee industry in terms of export receipts. And this, coupled with the recovery of the tourism industry, has boosted the country's foreign exchange earnings. That's why usually some people ask, where does Uganda get dollars? Because there has been a boost of dollars in the region and beyond in recent years. Not years, recent months. Some countries have been facing challenge of foreign exchange. Uganda is not one of them because we have a deliberate program to promote exports, foreign direct investment, and remittances. And that's where the dollars are coming. They are not coming from any other sources. Despite the steady economic growth, Uganda's longer-term growth also still has some risks, including climate change. We are aware of it. We have also some regional and global geopolitical tensions. Still, the interest rates at the global scene are still relatively higher than desirable, with, I think, the SOFR is about 5.3%. And that means you can't borrow anywhere below about 7-8% when you include in the margin. So the interest rates are still quite high, and also we have fluctuations still in commodity prices. So we are mindful of these risks and how disruptive they could be, and I hope in this fora we shall be able to discuss a number of mitigations for them. The Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development has now come up with a strategy, as I've already told you, to grow the economy from $50 billion in 2022-23 to $500 billion by the year 2040. And we are targeting the 4 areas where the bet is showing us that we are going to do well. The ATMs, agro-industrialization, tourism development, mineral development, including oil and gas, and then science, technology, and innovation, including ICT. The plan aims to double GDP every 5 years. It's an ambitious plan, but also raise GDP per capita from 1,146 US dollars to 7,000 US dollars by the end target year, 2039-40. We also want to increase savings. Ugandans are saving about 20% of GDP. We want to save by the end of this program or this strategy 40%. We want to double the savings effort of the country. We want also to raise exports as a share of GDP from 12% to 50%, but also attract more FDI into the country from the number I've given you to about $50 billion by 2040. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, as I reach the conclusion, this forum this year is intended to discuss ways through which we can harness opportunities for achieving the envisioned growth, the growth which is tenfold. We would want to see double-digit growth per annum, where I was looking at the numbers from Dr. Musisi between about 2000 to 2010, we had an average growth rate of about 7.3%. Between 2010 and now, we've had an average growth rate of about 5%. This is unacceptable. We want to see this doubled. The average growth rate should be at least 10% in the next period for us to achieve this. So we would want to see how do we harness the opportunities for achieving this, and we are going to discuss how we could boost the incomes of Ugandans through structural transformation, how we can promote industrial development and exports, because industry is one sure way of not only achieving high growth and sustaining it, but also changing the structure of the economy so that most Ugandans can now engage in the modern sector of industry. And also, we want to discuss how we could leverage climate change as a growth opportunity. And we cease to look at it as a problem, but how we can adapt and take advantage of climate change. How also we could overcome financing constraints and use urbanization to enhance economic opportunities. We will also focus on high productivity service sectors like tourism, business services, to drive diversification and innovation. And these efforts are crucial for achieving our ambition, which I've already told you. In conclusion, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, we are here to put our minds together, but not by using opinions, but well-researched papers to help us to inform our growth agenda. And I want to express my sincere appreciation to the International Growth Center, IGC, for the partnership with us. And the outcomes are going to be very significant when we deliberate here in advancing our efforts towards growing the size of the economy tenfold. It's therefore my great honor to be here, and I will take the opportunity now to invite Dr. Newfarmer to come and address you, and after that, the Honorable Minister will officially open this conference. I thank you.
Honorable Minister, senior policymakers, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's really a pleasure to welcome you here on behalf of the International Growth Center. I'd like to give a special word of thanks to the PS, to Albert Musisi and the Ministry of Finance, Economic Planning in setting up this conference and working together and producing it. And I'd particularly like to thank the PS for the lovely words characterizing me as an old friend of the Ministry of Finance. Now, I wonder if I could ask him next time to use the term maybe long-standing friend. Being in Uganda, you know, I can't pass up the opportunity to give a special shout out to the Ugandan champions in the Olympics last month. I mean, it was really very impressive, you know. The gold medal victory of Joshua Cheptegei in the 10,000 meter run was truly amazing, you know. Similarly, running over 6 miles in 26 minutes. I mean, this is incredible. He'd get a ticket down on Kampala Road if he was going that fast. Also a special shout out to Peruth Chemutai's breathtaking athleticism in the women's steeplechase. This is very impressive. I think the government in its tenfold program is no less ambitious in its aspirations. The program seeks to raise incomes tenfold in the space of less than 2 decades. Key to doing so will be raising productivity. So let me say, let me characterize 3 developments in the international order that I think are really important and that will shape the opportunity that Uganda has to accelerate productivity growth here. Both, first of all, in focusing on world export markets, secondly, recent technological developments, and then climate change. So, first, world markets. We know that exports and trade are the key to productivity growth, and the tenfold program certainly recognizes this by posing a growth rate for exports in the double digits. This is terribly important for the success of the program, but success in exporting relies on 2 things. One is buoyancy in export markets, and secondly, domestic policies. The good news is the world economy seems more or less posed to do its part in helping Uganda drive exports. Many of the supply bottlenecks that occurred during the disastrous pandemic years have been overcome, and the recent cycle of inflation fighting and tighter monetary policies in the rich country appears to be ending. Global Analytica, for example, foresees annual growth rate of the global economy over the next 10 years to be in the 2.5 to 3% range. In Africa, many countries, of course, have emerged from the pandemic with heavy debts and will be under the burden of fiscal consolidation. But nonetheless, I think the optimism surrounding the Africa Continental Free Trade Area provides ample energy for the regional market. So I think there's a lot of optimism about the buoyancy in export markets to support Uganda's export drive. Ugandan policymakers might pay attention, however, to some important stresses in the institutional underpinnings of the global economy. Trade and political tensions dating back to Russia's invasion of Ukraine threaten to segment the world market into major blocks. This would be adversely affect Rwanda or Uganda possibly. And at the same time, new protectionist sentiment is clearly rising in some of the rich countries, perhaps most evident in the case of one of the US presidential candidates who advocates a 20% across-the-board tariff on all products coming into the United States. In this environment, I think Africa and Uganda have a special interest in the ongoing discussions in Geneva about WTO reform, because the WTO remains, I think, one bulwark against rising protection that's extremely important for small markets to take advantage of, small countries to take advantage of. Well, even more important than events abroad is the role of domestic policy. The tenfold program highlights the role of key anchor sectors, as the PS sketched out here, and those are going to be pivotal to achieving the objectives of the program. While the sessions today and tomorrow will discuss these in detail, let me just put forward 4 general findings that come out of the recent economic literature and that we might bear in mind as we review policies towards those 4 sectors. First, one thing that comes out of the literature is that focusing policy on helping the private sector to overcome market constraints, market failures, is an element of successful industrial policy. This is a literature, by the way, to which the PS himself has made some important contributions. One example of this is, for example, helping financial markets, which often fail to serve SMEs inadequately, by providing carefully targeted subsidies to credit programs. Or subsidies to upstream activities appear to be really important. Input services such as mobile networks or education services or mineral refining or even R&D. All of these tend to have multiplier effects that pay off through the entire economy. That's only the first finding. A second finding, and this was perhaps equally important, is that the design of these programs matter. Studies show that subsidies that increase competition, such as subsidies to firms and EPZs or export credit schemes, these are likely to increase productivity and generate employment. Where on the other hand, programs that restrict competition, perhaps through high tariffs or other policy barriers to entry, often stifle productivity and become a drag on growth. So that's the second lesson. A third lesson that comes out of this literature, I think that's important, is that subsidies program work best when they're time-bound and phased out over time, so that the new activities that are being created stand on their own in the face of international competition. That's not the way a lot of industrial policy in many countries around the world actually works. Often it is common to subsidize industries indefinitely, never subjecting them to international competition. In Argentina, for example, they subsidized the auto industry to the point where it became technologically retrograde for many years. In fact, if you'd wanted to buy an automobile in Argentina in 1990, the most the most modern technology product you could find was a 1968 Ford Falcon. That's an example of a policy that restricts competition and leads to technological obsolescence. East African countries, for their part, might wish to review the decades-old high protection, for example, to sugar production, which has gone on for several years with no end in sight. A final lesson that comes out of this literature, I think, is that evaluation of programs and policies is a prerequisite to success. You have to know when you're winning. You also have to know when maybe you're losing, your programs are not so effective. And I think one of the things that's nice about this conference and about the Ministry of Finance's efforts to bring evidence into policy is that it will help in this effort. So monitoring and evaluation of programs is fundamental. So as we hear suggestions for policies in the 4 sectors in the course of the day, we might ask the question, do these programs spur competition? Are they designed to overcome market failures and create synergies? Are they time-bound? And will the subsidies programs be adequately monitored and evaluated? So let me move just for a moment to the second major global issue, which I think will affect productivity growth, and that's technology. You know, we've all heard a lot about the emerging new technologies. We know that the pace of technology development globally is accelerating. Uganda is spectacular in its openness to new ideas. But consider generative AI. That's artificial intelligence. Well, we know that the smartphone took about a decade to roll out fully. And even in Africa, it's still in that process. However, if we think about generative AI, the use of generative AI in business, according to a recent McKinsey survey, has doubled in about just the last 10 months to 66% in the businesses surveyed in the US and Europe. That's phenomenally fast. It's also proliferated around the world relatively quickly. This is one of the fastest diffusing major technological developments that we have seen in human history. We don't know what the implications of AI are for Uganda, but it's a fair bet that it will be terribly important and is worth watching quite closely. The Economist magazine, in a recent article, raised the specter that Africa as a whole might be left behind from the accelerating wave of AI technology. Why? Well, one constraint is the lack of digital infrastructure. The cost of both access to mobile data and broadband here in Uganda is roughly twice that of what it is in the UK. The recent establishment of the Starlink satellite system, to be set up, I understand, later this year, offers the promise of high-speed, cheap access to the internet that could drive down these costs over time. This is an important source of potential competition that really will benefit Uganda. Another constraint, of course, in technological adoption is human constraints, worker and professional skills. The PS mentioned that a bit earlier. Both infrastructure and educational performance are captured in a new index that's been put out called the Network Readiness Index. Unfortunately, Uganda, of the 134 countries surveyed, ranks 117. And that simply highlights the importance of focusing on digital infrastructure and human resource capabilities. Overcoming these constraints involves investment, another point the PS raised, a central part of the tenfold program. Increasing investment requires finance, including tax revenues and foreign finance. I look forward to the discussion in this sector, in this conference, that will review both of those opportunities for increasing revenues and obtaining foreign finance. The third major area, of course, is climate change. Last year, 2023, was the warmest in human history. 2023 was the warmest in human history. I've been told it was also the warmest in Uganda as well. So this is a major issue. Climate-related damages diminish productivity in several ways. For example, in agriculture, climate-induced losses for coffee production may range anywhere from 10 to 50% over the next half century. Of course, drought can reduce crop yields, and floods can damage and erode crop and erode soils as well. Similarly, transport systems are another area that may be affected by climate-related damages. And to make matters worse, of course, climate heightens the risk of pandemics. So all is not gloom on the climate front. A recent paper from the IGC highlighted the role of technological change and innovation linked to growth policies that can in fact increase and accelerate growth. Creating opportunity out of danger is really the name of the game. I look forward to the World Bank's updating of its new climate change report that will occur later in this conference. I should also mention that Uganda is playing an important role in bringing together other African countries on the issue of climate change and how to deal with it and seize those growth opportunities. A month ago, on July 17th, the Honorable Minister Kasaji and the Minister of State, with the help of Sam Magumi, I don't know that Sam's here this morning, organized a meeting here in Kampala of the Coalition of Finance Ministers for Climate Action. The meeting outlined ways African countries could marshal revenues and investment resources to accelerate adaptation and tap into green finance. This is an important development, and I think the African countries working together, and the finance ministers particularly working together, can have a major impact on the COP29 discussions that are coming up. So in closing, let me just highlight that the world export market technology, and climate change provide abundant opportunities for productivity gains central to the success of the Tenfold program. But the Tenfold program reminds us, over 15 years, reminds us that achieving development is a long-distance run, and like Joshua Chepchiji and Peru Chumatai, it requires, over time, sacrifice, hard work, perseverance, sacrifice in the form of increasing savings to finance investment, perseverance in the face of political obstacles to good policies, and commitment to the shared goals of sustained high growth over years. Maybe we can see this conference as a move towards, and the Tenfold program, as a move towards the starting gate of that long distance run. Thank you very much.
Sorry, now I take the honor to invite the minister to officially open this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. PSST, Dr. Richard Farmer, new Farmer, distinguished friends, participants, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to you all. Let me take this opportunity to welcome you to this forum on behalf of the Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, the Honorable Matia Kasaija. I don't want to take more time because the PSST has already presented the snapshot of the Ugandan economy. But briefly, let me thank Dr. Richard from the International Growth Center for supporting this forum over the years. Thank you so much. I am also happy that the PS has presented to the public our sustainable growth of the economy, precipitated by our resolve to develop infrastructure to support the human capital development and also our wealth creation programs. The NRM government, under the leadership of His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, adopted the mass line. Mass line in the sense that when we decide to do an intervention, it must be for all the people of Uganda. That is why we talk about prosperity for all. That is why we talk about parish development model for all the parishes in Uganda. That is why we talk about immunization for all, among many other programs. It is therefore my expectation that the think tanks in this room will provide evidence-based information which will help us make evidence-based decisions and policies that are critical for the sustainable growth of our country. We are now resolved to grow this economy tenfold in the next 15 years, and this is an ambitious program. As Dr. Richard was saying, it requires sacrifice, and it requires commitment to achieving it by all of us, the stakeholders. With these few remarks, it is now my honor to declare the 8th High-Level Economic Growth Forum open. I thank you so much.
Surely we can do better than that. Another round of applause for the Honorable Minister. So that one was for the Honorable Musasizi. So now we can clap for the Honorable Minister of Finance, who he was representing and could not be here with us, and the entire Minister of Finance. Can we once again appreciate the Minister of Finance, ladies and gentlemen? I noticed this morning you were extremely mean with your hand claps. Then when the PSST appreciated Dr. Richard, it's as if it was, that's like it's pocket change Dr. Richard has passed on to the PSST. Can we appreciate the IGC, ladies and gentlemen? And as you said, Dr. Richard, long-standing relationship. I agree, totally agree. We would like to dig in, but I can ask my technical team once again to do something we did. For those of you who came late, you might miss out on some of your best pictures. And I just want to reward those of you who came late, that there is something we've introduced. The Minister of Finance, of course, working with the Minister of ICT, which is where UBC falls, is driving digital transformation in this country. So we would like to do something really cool. Technical team, do we have the QR code? There you go. So if you came late, I can take you through this quite a bit. And I know my friend Julius Mukunda came late. Julius, you didn't participate. So Julius, here you go. Since CSBAG is a partner of the Ministry of Finance, you scan the QR code. And the cool part is that as soon as a picture of yours is taken and your face appears in that picture, it will download on your phone automatically. That's the cool part. So you can share. So you scan this QR code. Please don't use your Kabiriti. Scan the QR code with a smartphone, all right? And this should lead you to, of course, you'll ask for access to your camera. And then we want your beautiful picture. And I did share a disclaimer here. The Ministry of Finance will not use that data or share it with the Uganda Revenue Authority. That's very clear. We've agreed we will not give any photo evidence to URA. I see PwC here, and they will be keen on this. So it'll ask for access to your face. The moment you take your picture, it'll ask for your WhatsApp number. Please don't put the number that is not on WhatsApp. It wants your WhatsApp number. And the idea is that immediately you put in your WhatsApp number, it will send you a link that lets you know you've been registered officially. And the moment there are pictures of yourself, you will get them on that platform. So that's really cool. And I want to appreciate Dr. Albert and the team for putting this together. This is really exciting. And we were discussing other things that the smart IT people are doing at the ministry that we should incorporate in the next forum. Dr. Richard, we'll have a cooler thing we're planning for the next forum. So please stay with us on the next 9th forum. All right. So let's start with our very first panel. And I'm excited because the PSST will chair this very first panel. This particular panel, and I'm glad Dr. Richard and the PSST shared the different topics that we'll be handling for these 2 days. Our very first session, Growth Strategy for Structural Transformation, will be chaired by none other than our PSST. But I want to quickly run through his panelists. And I will invite the panelists, chair, on your behalf and quickly run through their bios. The very first panelist on this panel is Dr. Albert Musisi, who holds a PhD in economics from the Institute of Social Studies of Erasmus University, Rotterdam, the Netherlands. He has considerable experience in economic development policy, microeconomic policy, and poverty analysis. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Albert Musisi, please come. Can we give him a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen? And that was me shortening his profile. It's quite rich, and I will try. I know the ministry shared all these very important profiles, but I can't, they are really too long. And the other panelist is Mr. Moses Bekabye. Moses Bekabye. Can we appreciate him as he comes? I will run through Moses Bekabye's profile very shortly. Moses, please do come, and you will notice where your seat is on the platform as soon as you get closer to us. So, ladies and gentlemen, of course, Moses Bekabye, as I ran through these too many profiles that are here, I also will invite, and maybe as I find Bekabye's profile, I'll also invite on the panel Dr. Tim Doberman. Can we appreciate Dr. Tim Doberman? All right. Okay, yes. So Moses Bekabye is currently a technical advisor for economic affairs in the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, supporting the Minister of Finance and the Permanent Secretary and Secretary of the Treasury. Some of his achievements, of course, include part of a three-person team that structured the US dollar 645 million interest rate swap, IRS, for the Karuma hydropower dam, of course, spearheading the first export credit agency loan for the Kabale International Airport, and also undertook the project development for the Kampala Industrial and Business Park at Namave as a brownfield, plus mobilizing its euro 249 million ECA financing. I could go on and on, but we will stay here the whole evening. So, ladies and gentlemen, Moses Bekabye, that's his profile. I will also invite to the panel our discussant, as I find Tim's profile. Our discussant is Dr. Faizo Buyinza. Can we appreciate Dr. Faizo as he makes his way? Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. All right, and so this panel, as I mentioned, will be chaired by our PSST, but allow me run through Dr. Tim's profile. He's the Director of Research at the International Growth Center, IGC, and a Research Fellow in Environmental Economics at the London School of Economics. Tim Doberman has advised a number of governments in Asia and Africa on the energy and public finance issues. His research focuses on how climate change can affect those in poverty and how energy sectors in developing countries can be made more effective. He holds a PhD in economics from the London School of Economics and Political Science. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Dr. Tim. And finally, if I can find the very final profile before inviting the PSST to take charge of his panel, I will introduce the fact that the discussant does speak, of course, the tail end of the conversation, looking at the different insights that the panelists will have shared, and of course, giving us a way forward in his view, and clearly they are experts in their space. So I will come to Dr. Faizo's profile a little later. I'm still struggling. There are too many profiles to come through. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome our chair, the chair of this very first session, the PSST, to take charge of his session. PSST, I'll be the timekeeper, so I'll keep coming to you in case we're running late.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I have a very powerful panel, but they are going to make presentations, short presentations on the topic. So maybe since they are going to project their presentations, other members will have to go back and sit and see. Then we shall come back after the presentations for you to interact with them. That will work. I will start with the team. Let me see. No. I'm going to start with Dr. Albert Musisi to make a short presentation on the challenges and opportunities to accelerate growth and structural transformation in Uganda. And after him, I'll have Moses Bekabye to summarize for us the 10-fold growth strategy. Then Tim is going to talk about the structural transformation, its essential elements in achieving the 10-fold program. And then Faizo will discuss what they have presented. So I will start with Dr. Albert, and I think for us it would be better to go and we see what Albert is going to present. Thank you.
Thank you, PS. As everybody knows, or maybe not, I'm here for the 8th time. I was among those who started the growth forums. And the idea was really to, as the PS said, to use evidence to advise government on economic growth policy, but also for the budget. I'm going to stand on the protocols that have been highlighted by Maurice, so I won't be repeating. But I have to start with saying good morning to all of you, and welcome to the 8th Economic Growth Forum. As you see on the slides, I don't have the word challenges there. I have opportunities. And this is mainly because in the past, we have been talking about the challenges and the strategies to overcome those challenges as we are dealing with the economic growth recovery. But as we are going to see in my presentation, last year, we actually came back to the growth we are having in the past before we got the challenges that we got. And economic growth has actually returned to potential GDP growth. So in this forum, we are really going to look at opportunities going forward in terms of accelerating economic growth and structural transformation. And in my presentation, I don't know if this works. Okay. The theme, as has been highlighted, is seizing opportunities for structural transformation to increase productivity and resilience. The two words there that we took, productivity and resilience. I know we had a discussion where the PS he thought maybe resilience should be for when we are recovering. But for us to achieve the tenfold growth, we need to sustain growth, as somebody said, for several years. It's going to be a marathon. And as we are going to see, some of the opportunities actually have some challenges in terms of implementing. And so the objectives of this forum are as follows. The first one is to review what we have already pointed out about growth performance. What has our growth performance been? And then identify opportunities to accelerate current and future growth. But also we want to discuss research findings on economic growth from both our local and international researchers to inform our economic growth strategy. I say here discuss because, as I'm going to point out, in the past we have been having this big discussion with people from academia who actually do most of the research. But there was a feeling that actually the research is academic, more theory than practice. And these forums were really to help us bridge bridge the gap between what we saw from the practitioners and what the research was saying, and as well use the evidence and make it practical, in other words. So we are going to identify strategies to accelerate economic growth and to sustain high economic growth rates in the face of the challenges affecting the global economy, regional and geopolitical tensions, and climate change, but also to provide strategies for creation of productive employment, poverty reduction, and human development. And importantly, we are going to go in some detail to discuss the implementation of the tenfold growth strategy, government's tenfold growth strategy. We want to know the details. And I hope my colleague later on will give us these details. Many people are hearing it for the first time. And there's a few questions. Is it practical? And this is what we are going to discuss, and we shall benefit from ideas from all of you. Then finally, we want to provide evidence to inform government's policy actions and enable the effective allocation of resources in the national budget for next financial year, 25-26. if I go to the performance, as the PS highlighted, the 4 years before the first Economic Growth Forum, in fact, before that time, we had robust growth. The 2 decades, we had over 7% growth. But then the last 4 years before the first Growth Forum, we saw a very big drop in growth to an average of 4.6%. And in 2016-17, we had only 3.1%. That was about more than half drop from the growth rates we are seeing in the past. As you can see there. And one of the issues that really motivated us to do this forum, although we realized that growth had dropped and it was, but still higher than the rest of the sub-Saharan African countries, we knew that it was well below our potential growth. Our potential growth at that time was computed to be between 6 to 7%. But as I highlighted, we are only growing at 3%, which means that it was really low. Simply defined, potential growth is the maximum level of output or real GDP that an economy can sustain without generating inflationary pressures. So you can see that we are really operating well below our potential. And we needed to soul search and also discuss and also benefit from evidence to see how we can actually return to potential growth. So during these sessions of, at least for the last several years, we discussed and had constraints and challenges that were identified and policies and strategies recommended, which have been used to inform policy action, as well as the allocation of resources, as I've said. This has been since 2017-18. And every year we come, discuss, and then take some of the ideas from the conference, but also some of the research that had been done, the evidence that has been generated, and then we introduce that in our allocation of resources in the government budget. And the results have been that we saw recovery. As we see, right after the first growth conference, we had very good growth, 6.3% and 6.4% in 2017-18 and 2018-19. However, this was rudely interrupted by the COVID-19 and the other external shocks, right? But since then, we have seen steady growth and we have gone back to 6%. Now, that is about our potential growth, at least from our assessment, our analysis. Now, the challenge we have, if we are to get the tenfold growth strategy as we are talking, we are going to have to do more than the normal things we do. What are these things? And these are the opportunities that I'm going to talk about that we could actually explore. But as you could see that also per capita GDP has increased. Now, if you look at the growth between 2016, 17 and now, this is really a substantial growth because it's over 4% per year in per capita growth. Now, in the past, we are having about 2 to 3%. Now, the question is whether we can sustain this for a number of years. In many countries, for you to get the kind of growth that we are talking about in terms of size of our economy, many countries on average do it in 2 decades, around 2 decades. Now, for us, we want to do it in 15 years. It's ambitious, of course. So what are we going to do to get there? And that's what I want to try to address, and as well hear from the discussions that we are going to have. Now, in terms of our Uganda in particular, it means that we have to significantly grow, well above what we have achieved last year of 6%. As PS pointed out, that means growing at least 10%, between 8 and 10% for at least 15 years or 20 years for us to double this economy. Now, what does that mean? It means we have to find new sources of growth. And we must also improve our productive capacity. That is the productivity we are talking about if we are to achieve higher potential GDP. Because